My name's Mike Hodgson. I'm CEO of Serabi Gold, and I'm at the one-to-one in London this week. It's May the 11th, and very happy to give everyone an update on Serabi Gold and where we are. And here I am with Matt of Crux.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You've been in Brazil for a long, long time.
I have.
How tired are we on a scale of 1 to 10?
Pretty tired, pretty tired. I literally got back late last week. I haven't even slept in a proper bed yet, so looking forward to that tonight.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, thanks for making it here. You put out your 25 numbers. Maybe give us the headline numbers there, because that kind of leads nicely on to what I want to talk about in a second.
Well, we increased our ounces from in 2025 and 2024. With 2024, we did 38,000 ounces. We had a meaningful increase to 44,000 ounces. We realised an AISC of 1816 for the year, which was great. We mean gold. Actually, this is an interesting point. The gold price, our average gold price for the year, was 34.51. People really forget. They just think, oh, you know, 4,000, 4,500.
24 was what?
That was, you know, but
2,200.
Yeah, well, but 2025, it was literally only in November and December we popped to 4 and 5, and everyone seems to think, oh, that was all of the year.
Yeah.
So we generated about $30 million cash, ended the year with 50 million in the bank, which was great. EBITDA about $79 million altogether. So great start to the year, and I'm pleased to say Q1, that growth, and we've enjoyed an even better gold price, and things are going very nicely. And we actually accumulated, I think we're at about $65 million by the end of Q1.
Right, okay. So production up, margin up, because gold price, or the price that you're being paid at the door is up. 2026, hopefully more of the same. So you're building up a big kind of tidy balance sheet.
Yep.
Big cash balance, and I guess people are just going to say, well, what do you do with that? Usual questions around dividends, buybacks.
Well, the first thing we did, we actually got rid of our debt. So in Q1,
that's gone completely now?
We got rid of the debt in February as well. So we have absolutely debt free with the company now. It's nearly virtually a 20 million with the debt paid off, with that included. It was almost a $20 million quarter, and we anticipate the same. So wherever you want to put the gold price at the moment, probably we're going to be doing sort of somewhere between $1,600 million free cash for this year. What we're doing at the moment is our AISC, as I said, it's probably crept up a little bit. We're probably going to be in the 2000s in 2026. Yeah. But we are spending a lot of money on exploration, as much as we possibly can, probably about $15 million. We've also got capital, as we're pre-production capital, as we're expanding Coringa, as we're going forward. So, but that's still, even with those things in on top of the AISC, we're probably, wherever we want to put the gold price, $22,000 margin, so times 55,000 ounces, or 53 is our lower end of guidance this year. So if we should be looking at 80, 90, $100 million. So yes, that's going to be in the pot. What are we going to do with it? Well, we've just issued a notice of our dividend, which is going to be paid, I think, at the AGM, after the AGM. That's it. 20% of cash flow of 2025. That's our policy. We anticipate keeping that the same for 2026, which is good news for our loyal shareholders, obviously. We'll continue the exploration effort. What we're doing with the exploration, we're trying to really understand what Coringa and Palito can be, because obviously what we're trying to do, when we've got to 55,000 ounces, which is what we're doing this year, our plant is absolutely maxed out. We're all sorting all the Coringa ore, or nearly all of it. We're all sorting some of the Palito ore. We can't really do anything more with that plant without expansion. The question is, what do we expand to? Well, that's going to be driven by how big is the resource. So we're trying to really give that a good go. In 2025, we grew the resource from 1 million to 1.4 million ounces. We're going to continue that campaign to the end of 2026, see where we get to. We hope we can get to close to 1.8, 2 million ounces maybe. From that, we're going to look at the reserve content and say, okay, the sustainable level of production for this business is going to be this. And then we'll start the plant expansion. This, of course, is all predicated on us getting the full permit at Coringa, which we're also making good progress on as well.
Okay, a lot in there. But the heart of it is the availability of cash. Deciding what can these assets be, that's going to be predicated on how much you spend and how you spend it. Yeah. So plant first, that's number one. In terms of kind of incremental cost to kind of expand the plant side of things, it looks like what?
But that's a very cheap.
Cash,
it's a very cheap cost because we already have. You remember when we bought Coringa, it came with a process plant. Yep. which it was a greenfield project that had already bought a process plant. So, it wasn't perfect, but the mills were in good condition, as were the crushing facilities. So we're moving one of those ball mills to Polito now. In fact, we're not waiting to get to the end of an exploration campaign. We actually are. We're anticipating two things. We're anticipating the final permit is going to be awarded at Coringa in 2020, before the end of this year, or maybe first part of next year. That's what our legal counsel is advising. So we've already started work on an expansion in the plant, which will be ready in 2027.
So what can you do before you kind of get the permit?
Well,
I mean, obviously, well, tell me, sorry, go for it.
What can we do? Well, I said, rather than sit and wait to get the result, which we're pretty confident of getting, which is like resource expansion, we feel confident enough now that we can start the process of putting in the process plant.
So spend money before you've got the permit.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really confident.
We feel pretty confident about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that comes from the fact that it's already operating.
The main
conversations.
Well, look, as you know, we had to do an extra step of environmental sort of permitting. Let's say we had to do an indigenous study, and that's been going on for 3 years or more. It was kind of drifting a little bit sideways. Partly the problem was we have two organisations in Brazil, government organisations, INCRA, who are the land registry, and FUNAI, who are the Federal Agency for Indigenous People. Mm-hmm. Both those groups were not working as quickly as they could, partly because of manpower problems within those organisations, etc. We finally got that kind of got organised, and we made some progress at the end of last year. The ECI was presented to the indigenous groups, and it was signed with unanimous approval. Okay. Huge milestone for the company. So that says to us the permit's coming.
Right, and who's been looking after it? Because obviously, given the history, you probably doubled down and made darn sure you kind of got the social license side of things.
Yeah.
Tidier. So
well, we have a consultancy there. We use our Brazilian management. Yeah. Our legal counsel gets involved too. I've got involved. I've met both chiefs of both the tribes myself. Right. And they obviously got to know me quite well now. So we all get involved. So we're just trying to really kind of sort of improve that. Yeah, just really improve that relationship, and just want to show these guys, they can really do business with us, and that's it. Right. And the great thing for us is we've had Polito for many years, and we're not a sort of, I think I've said to you before, we're not a here today, gone tomorrow company. Yep. We've committed to the region for 20 years, so I mean, they know we're kind of a trustworthy lot. Okay. So hopefully that's going to go.
Say well. That comes, hopefully at the end of this year, maybe next. In terms of the incremental build-up of this plant, it's 55,000 you're maxed. What's the optimum that you're kind of, or what's the kind of setup? What do you want to get to? What do you think you need to show the world that you're capable of producing?
Well, I don't really know the answer to how far we can go. That's why the drill bit's going to determine that. I mean, that's why we're drilling.
I know you've got to feed it, but there must be, you're doing some work now. And what's the incremental build-up?
Obviously everybody wants to get to 100,000 ounces. Whether we can get to that or not, I'm not quite sure. But,
But is there anything that would stop you doing that if you wanted to?
No.
No?
Okay. No, it's perfectly doable. I mean, it's just more faces underground, more attack points. I mean, Coringa, for example, isn't really just one mine. It's a series of like 4 little mini mines. Yeah. You just have more of them and more equipment. And likewise at Polito. So the idea would be, we can probably get to both those mines. I think Coringa is the biggest story. I mean, it's got a lot of potential at Coringa. I mean, at the end of the day, just to put it into perspective, We've got 500,000 ounces there before this resource update 3 weeks ago. Now we've got 800,000. Yeah. We've got an 8-kilometre sort of strike length of a structure, only of which 1.5 kilometres has been drilled. Right. And on top of that, we've got another 20 kilometres of anomaly, which hasn't even got a drill hole in. So I look at Coringa and think that can easily be a 1.5 million ounce deposit alone. Okay,
so you're underground miners. You've been doing it a long time, and you're quite good at listening to your ASIC, and you know what you're doing. In terms of the exploration through the drill bit, you've got money to get after it. We've talked, last year about how much you want to deploy. When you're sort of looking at your cash balance now, is that you can't speed that up? You can't drill quicker, can you? So you're changing the target?
You lose discipline, and the thing is, with all of this drilling, we're not drilling, like copper deposits, which are just like continuous. You've kind of got to drill, see the result, drill again, don't drill there, do that. So it's got to be a little bit disciplined. So we've got 6 rigs, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And we've got about 80 people in
Are
exploration.
they all coming
dedicated.
from underground? Or?
No, it's 50-50. Some
50-50,
underground,
right.
some on surface.
Okay.
But we are generating a huge amount of core each month. So if you suddenly went up to double that number, it would be wildcat drilling.
I mean, what are you doing in-house on site versus sending out for assays?
We can do everything on site, but we actually duplicate the assays outside for sort of 4311 purposes. Yeah. But we can get the turnaround quite fast, but it just means more than 6 rigs would be a bit of a nightmare for the team to kind of stay on top of.
Right. Okay.
Because the nice thing is it's a results-driven program, so
So what's that look like? It's just make people understand, help people understand it in terms of meters or dollars being spent this year in total.
30,000 meters per year, something like that.
Okay.
So 3,000 a month.
Right. Okay.
So that's $15 million, 15 up to $20 million.
15.
15. Yep.
Okay, fine. Which leaves a lot of cash for keeping your powder dry. You talk about sort of 20% allocation to, shareholders. What is the kind of M&A environment look like, in Brazil? Because been a lot of M&A happening.
Yeah.
Some of it good, some of it not so good. You never want to overpay. What are the options available to someone like you?
Probably less than they were. I think ironically, when we had no money, there were lots of opportunities, and we didn't have the paper, we didn't have the currency. Now we've gone, the paper's getting better and the currency's getting better, the opportunities mainly have gone. Yeah. So we're always looking. We've probably expanded our sort of search a little bit further, more into the Americas now. But in Brazil, there's some interesting private opportunities which we're always having a look at. But we do have a very disciplined approach to our exploration. To our M&A. We're not just going to buy for scale. It's got to be, a creative, a good fit for us. Sure. Because we fancy our chances of growing organically.
But what does that mean in profile-wise? Is it got to be underground? Is it going to be open pit? Is it high grade, low grade? Where do you sit? Is it producing, for instance? I mean, where do you go with this?
Certainly, we're not particularly. Yeah, I think at the moment we really want to focus on near-term production or producing. Got it. That's certainly it. Underground, open pit, fairly ambivalent too. The underground, yes, we know it well. We're good at it, so that's a good thing. Right. Open pit diversifies technical risk, makes life a bit simpler, reduces ASIC. They're both, both got.
But essentially times, right? Because you're not going to go and compete with the big. G Mining Ventures isn't going to be competing against you. They're going to look for a different sort of profile.
Correct.
From you, for instance.
Correct. Yes.
So mention them because they're Brazil too, and next door. But you've got cash. You've got stock which is worth something. Yes. I'm looking back. You look back 3, 4, 5 years, and you go. Different times, different planet, quite frankly. But does that mean the competition is more or less? I know you're saying there's maybe less targets that match your criteria, but is there more increased competition because more people have money?
I think one of the challenges we have is there aren't a lot of the right size scale projects and operations for us. Partly because Brazil is dominated by larger companies. There aren't many juniors in Brazil, so therefore there aren't many junior-sized projects in Brazil or operations in Brazil.
By juniors, you mean public companies?
Public companies. Right. Private, so we move into the private area, and then you've got the game of valuations, because that's the next thing. So that's the challenge. But I think, yes, our shopping list is probably for something not with too much without too much competition, because we're kind of something fit. But as I say, we've looked at a lot of stuff and we haven't done anything yet, because we do have a lot of discipline in this, and we're not.
We don't have to rush.
No, not at all. We've got a very good shareholder base. They're very patient. Things are going very well. We're generating a lot of cash. Yeah. So we're not.
It's quite interesting for you, because you've chosen to get rid of the debt. I mean, I never mind a company which had a little bit of debt on the books. Not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, right? It doesn't really matter if you're cash producing. But your share register, that's very different. Again, that you've had to kind of rotate that out, find some big ticket riders along the way as well. Yeah. Patient money, all of that kind of good stuff. So, is there more to come on that? How do you kind of treat the share register now? Do you need more institutional on board? Is that what you're looking for?
It's certainly more democratic than it was. I mean, if you recall, we had 2 big shareholders, both 25%. Yeah. And at times they kind of had conflicting views on how the company should go forward. Yeah. So that was, a tricky situation to manage. We've got the group in São Paulo now, Starboard, and they've been very supportive. They're not on the board. We have a regular company, communication with them. They went to site, delighted with where they are. They've done very well. You know, in 1 year, they've told us we're their best performing stock. So
Nice.
you know, very good. So great relationship with those guys. They're very their views seem very aligned with us. What we're trying to do.
Yeah.
They're patient as well. So, and the rest is, we've got a couple of small London institutions, and the rest is largely retail. But I'd rather have that than what we had. So yes, it would be nice to have, you know, more institution in there, but small institutions. But it's we're turning over sort of anywhere between 500,000 1 million shares a day. So it's healthy. It's good.
And I guess a lot easier to attract personnel, people, the right sort of people.
Yes.
I'm intrigued as to what you think the makeup of the company needs to look like, because we've talked about exploration, always been good at that, underground production, good at that. Obviously, the social license thing is something that's evolved and developed. But in terms of a kind of growth profile for the company, can the people that you've got right now fulfill that need, or is there more to come?
It's a good question, that, because I do sometimes look at whether we can, at times, whether we can think big enough. You know, because we've been in the trenches for a long time.
Recently, up until
we've been in the trenches for a long time with our current team, so we probably would need to strengthen in a few places. But I think there's that's easily solvable in Brazil. There's a lot of, you know, in fact, it's hard to find people who do what we do. Yeah. Because we're small and high grade and selective, and to find, you know, Brazilian workforce to do that's very unique and very niche. Yeah. To actually be bigger is an easier fix actually.
Right, and obviously we talked about M&A potential in country, but you talked about the Americas more broadly. South America still? Or
the Americas, I think. Okay, to try to sort of, you know, expand throw the net a bit wider. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. A bit more competition. Up north.
Yeah. Yes, they say. Look, we'd like to stay in Brazil, obviously, because you're leveraging your in-country G&A over more, you know, you're spreading your G&A over sort of more ounces that way. It's easier rather than repeating the whole thing again in another jurisdiction. So that would be ideal. But again, it's for the reason I said before, Brazil is not awash with, you know, smaller to mid-size opportunities. Yeah. But obviously that's our desire most of all.
Okay, but I think it's been a really interesting shift in terms of mentality. Certainly, the people we get inbound, right? You people are going. It used to be the case of, will they hit their quarterly numbers? Oh my goodness, they're 500 ounces off. You know, that's how tight things were, and obviously margins are much tighter down at those levels. Now it's the inbound seems to be, what are they going to do with regards to that kind of growth component? You know, are they genuine? All companies say they're doing M&A. You know, are they going to do that? Will they get something over the line? We know they can mine. We know they can explore, which is a nice position to be in, because you've kind of proved your worth, or the team has proved its worth there, and to be focused on, well, let's just make the right kind of acquisition. It's a little bit easier, isn't it?
It is, but as I said, we're not going to sort of compromise what we're doing just to chase some scale. You know, because there are a lot of things out there that you don't want to buy. Yeah. My mentor always used to say to me, sometimes the best deals you do are the ones you don't do. True. So there's always that in the back of my mind too.
No one needs another train wreck.
Yes.
No one needs another train wreck. Well, Mike, I'm great to have you aboard. I hope you do get some sleep.
Thank you very much.
Tonight,
thank you.
That's been a long old haul. Trotting around the Americas and getting back here. I'm sure the last thing you want to do is be trotting around a conference in London, despite
4 more
the
days
interest and despite the amount of money that's coming out of London at the moment. That's kind of surprising, isn't it?
Amazing, yeah. Like, I actually think our share price, I mean, I do think this is true. I think, you know, we're a gold mining junior on the AIM. There aren't many of us. So I think we do have a little bit of a sentimental sort of fan club going on here as well. So I think it's good, you know.
No, the rooms I'm going to are full. They're really intrigued by gold. Yeah. It's a new thing to a lot of them. So it's definitely got the momentum side of things.
We were discussing last week just on consensus gold prices, the way that's gone up long term. So it looks.
Where are we at now? What do you reckon?
36 to 37.
Yeah. Do you remember when it was 1650?
I do indeed. I remember it was 247.
I'm not that old.
Thanks, Gordon Brown.
Cheers. We'll see you. We will see you soon. Keep doing your thing. Seems to be everyone seems to think you're doing the right thing. So keep more of that, please.
Thank you very much.
Ciao.